So here's a video on React hooks. I'm going to briefly go over the API and the documentation that Facebook have released, just to give you guys an idea of what hooks are available. I'm going to upload a series of videos concentrated around each hook, going in depth into that hook and going through the full API and what it means and what you can do with it. So let's get into it. Right guys, so I've just loaded up here the React site, the introducing hooks page on the docs, and I recommend that everyone who uses React to read this and to get a good understanding of what it's about and the reasoning behind why they've implemented hooks now. It's kind of taken a bit of a 180, a U-turn on classes. That's what I've gathered from it. It seems like there is a shift in JavaScript to go back to being more functional, even though there's all these nice class features that have been implemented. It's not killing classes completely, but it does narrow down the uses of classes. So if you're still in the object-oriented style of programming, classes are obviously still great. But especially with React, like in components, in particular stuff with UI, classes seem a bit overkill for an actual UI element. There's still a place for it, but yeah. So yeah, I know I didn't actually watch Dan Abramov's video on the introduction, but it's probably a good watch, I guess, and if you've got spare like 45 minutes or an hour. You can see here they've said like no breaking changes way, great, everything works, is backward compatible, so classes are still very much usable. This is one of the main reasons, the motivations for it. So when you have stateful logic in a class, you kind of compact it in that one class, but there could be different things for it. So for instance, especially with like anything to do with state, if you have a piece of logic that's in one component, then if you want to reuse that another one, there is no easy way to do that. Well, there is Recompose. This seems like it's heavily based on Recompose and what they were doing with higher order components. So if you're not sure about Recompose, I'll put a link in the description, but check that out as well, because that's a library I have used in the past and it was really good for this type of thing. So separating logic by concerns and reusing certain bits of logic, but they were based on higher order components. This is kind of a nicer approach to that. And it does kind of go into that solution using higher order components to reuse stateful logic. And having all these different lifecycle methods doing multiple things. So when you had a component did mount, it might actually do 3 or 4 different things that are not related to each other. It might get some data, it might set a state, it might do a number of things for that component or the app, and they're not related, but they all have to be shoved into the component did mount or component did update, a lifecycle method, which made it hard to understand what bits do what unless you comment your code out. So yeah, it's good for that as well. I don't know about this, classes confuse both people and machines. I don't know about machines, but for people it's not that confusing. And maybe for new programmers, but classes are the cornerstone of software engineering. Like if you didn't learn that at all at school back in the day, if you did computer science or any software engineering related course, then yeah, I don't know. Classes are something that you need to understand, so I don't know about that. So I'll be doing a series of videos on all the different hooks. We've got, as you can see on the screen here, there are quite a few new hooks. The main ones, or the basic ones, are use state, use effect, and use context. Another one that is not basic but is going to be highly used, and I think it's a really good one, is use reducer. Now, don't panic just yet. They're not trying to eliminate Redux in any sense. Redux still has its uses. Redux is a lot easier to debug. You can see the actions. The Redux dev tools are amazing. That makes deving a lot easier, you know, being able to replay back. So this doesn't replace Redux, but it does give you something useful, which is state management for components, local state management for components that mirrors Redux. So you have a reducer, you have actions, and it's great. You can use the exact same boilerplate that you'd use for Redux state management, but in your local components, which I think is pretty good, because if there are things that need to be shared across, they can be. I think that's pretty good. It's a good move there. So right, that's a quick look at React hooks and the motivation behind introducing React hooks. What they are, they're basically functions that allow you to separate logic. So you've got useState, which allows you to, in a functional component without coding a class, so it limits uses of classes, keeps your components quite light as well in that sense, and you can share custom bits of logic that you can use throughout your app with hooks. See you in the next one.